It is not diversity that divides us. It is not our ethnicity, religion, or culture that divide us. There's only one division amongst all of us, between those who cherish for democracy and those who do not. Nelson Mandela. Hello everyone, welcome. Today I'm going to be talking about inclusion and diversity. These two concepts within the years have become really important for education. These two concepts are sometimes overlooked by parents and sometimes overused by educators. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit on my personal story, what brought me here and what brought me to education. When I was little, I used to stand up in front of all of my dolls and teach them. Whatever it was maths, Spanish, Catalan, or whatever subject I felt like teaching that day. Without noticing, I started growing up with the same idea of becoming a primary school teacher. 2 years ago, I was given the opportunity to start studying to be a primary school teacher in Blanquerna. And within these 2 years, I have been trying to find the key to education and how to include inclusion and diversity in the child's education, especially with those with the special needs and with bad conditions at home or within their environment. Diversity, it's been a huge problem within education these past years, especially because we have to accept as educators that there's no child alike to each other. All our childs are different. Our pupils have different characteristics on physical, they're different on socioeconomical environment, their capacity of learning are different, and their speeds of learning are different too. This is a concept or a fact that we have to consider when teaching them and while empowering their developmental process. For me, inclusion and diversity means acceptance. And this acceptance can only be created by building relationships and connections between students and between teachers, families, and the students. So nowadays, ICTs have become a huge problem in building connections. It's clear to us that ICTs have a beneficial impact on education because they mean that we have new resources to teach and new resources to improve education. But how can we build connections if there's a kid only looking at an iPad or in a computer? So ICTs, they're good in a controlled amount of time. 1 year ago, I got myself into a new adventure, and this is what's gonna lead me to the goal of this TED Talk. I got myself to be and applying to be a summer camp counselor in Seattle for 2 months. I was sure that I was gonna be dealing with homesickness because the kids that I was gonna be working with, they were from 7 years old to 9 years old. But when I went there and I started our staff training, I saw that that wasn't gonna be the only problem that I was gonna be dealing with. And during staff training, we did what we call scenarios. They proposed us different situations that we might be dealing with the kids. And we had to find a solution and talk with the kids and know how to get a solution that would be beneficial for both the counselor and the kids in order to make them have as much fun as they wanted to have at camp. I was lost. I didn't know how to deal with sexually abused kids. I didn't know how to talk with a kid that was homesick. I didn't know how to talk one-on-one counselor by camper. I was really nervous about having to deal with these issues. So I decided to talk with my unit director, who would be kind of my boss. And she said, why don't you use what's surrounding you, this environment? And I looked around and I saw a beautiful sunset. I saw a huge landscape to play and build new initiatives in order to work on those concepts that we have been talking about as inclusion and diversity. When the kids arrived, it was really, really difficult to make them bond and make them become a family within just a week. So we decided to use the resources that we were given, such as a climbing tower or a zip line or different initiatives to make team building activities as well as low ropes. So I'm going to talk about how good can be the empowering of outdoor activities in these two concepts such as inclusion and diversity. Being in an open air camp and without ICTs permitted, that beneficiates with 5 main points. The first one is that building a community is much easier. The fact that the kids had to live with the rest of the campers for 24 hours, they shared bunks, they shared cabins, and they shared all the activities that camp involved that made them become, at the end of the week, a family, or especially building new connections. It raises expectations and standards. When they were in camp, we were supposed to give them responsibilities that they do not have at home, like taking care of their bunk space and being responsible for themselves, being respectful with themselves, the environment, and others. This made the kids grow up so much within the week that they spent in camp that the families were surprised of the change that their kids, with just 1 week they did at camp. It also increases connection between them. So that means that if at the beginning they didn't know each other, they didn't know where they come from, they didn't know how to interact with each other, being in an open air camp, using outdoor activities, outdoor facilities, they made them bound. They made them build these connections that makes diversity and inclusion be beneficial and have a huge impact on the kid. It also builds culture. There was a huge range of different cultures in camp. There were kids from China, there were kids from America, there were kids from South America, there were from all over the world. And they were supposed to show and enrich others with their own cultures and make them others understand that their own culture was the only one living in camp. The 5th point was building and creating memories that will stay within this kid forever. And these memories will make them come back to camp and make them want to give the best of them, as best and always as they can. So now I have a question for you. As educators, do we have enough resources to empower inclusion and diversity?
Yeah!
Yes, that's the answer that I was expecting. We have a lot of resources to empower inclusion, diversity, and a lot of concepts that are huge and really, really important for our education. So let's use these resources, not only to have an impact on education or build up new projects that are going to be really innovative. Let's talk about our kids' education and let's improve our kids' education and become a better teachers day by day. Thank you so much.